Welcome to this episode of Washington in Focus. I'm your host, TJ Martinell. With me is Tim Clouser, and he has a very interesting story about public records in Spokane County that could cause some records potentially to become unaffordable for some people to obtain. Tim, could you tell us more?
The Spokane County Sheriff's Office and more specifically the county's public record specialist made this proposal to the Board of County Commissioners this week, asking them to impose this fee on people requesting body camera footage. And it's pretty routine thing. A lot of jurisdictions around the state do this, but Spokane County is unique because they don't currently charge for this. People can just request body cam footage and get those records back from the county. Sometimes it takes longer than others. But the issue here is that it creates a new barrier for people trying to get public records to hold the local government accountable and ensure that it is acting transparently. And when they made this proposal, they said it's going to be a 78 cents per minute of staff redaction time fee that they're going to implement or impose potentially if it's approved. And they said it's pretty middle of the road for fees around the state. But 78 cents, it doesn't sound like a lot. But they said it takes about 5 minutes of staff time to redact a single minute of recording. So, say you have a 5 minute body camera footage, a 5 minute long video, and you request that. They have to go through that and redact it, look for things like victim information, things that a reasonable person might find offensive. There's a list of things that they might have to redact, but it takes them 5 minutes to go through a single minute. So if you have a 5 minute long video, that's 25 minutes of staff redaction time times that 78 cents fee. So I think that comes out to just around $20. Doesn't seem like a big deal, but we're talking about a 5 minute long video. If people were trying to get body camera footage for, say, an officer involved shooting, it might be an hour, 2 hour long incident involving three, four, five, even more deputies. And if you're trying to get all of that footage, I think you're spending, say you have 5 hours of footage and it takes 5 minutes to look through each minute of that footage, and you're paying a 78 cents fee for each of those minutes. That's hours of staff time, and it could add up to some pretty substantial fees that someone like us, a journalist or a citizen watchdog, would have to pay for to get these records to hold the government accountable.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've filed public records in the past for body cam footage with police departments, and it was not cheap. It was, I think, $150 for one of them, but it was a significant amount of time. And like you said, they have to go through and they have to make sure that things are redacted or things that are, they have to comply with public disclosure laws. And so I think that that's the interesting balance is where it's not adding huge burdens to the local government that's trying to comply with the public records request. And on the other hand, you want this stuff to be accessible to the public, and it shouldn't be based on how much money they have to be able to afford this stuff. And so that's kind of where we're seeing this, I'd say, meeting of two different priorities is one is keeping the cost for local governments down while at the same time making records available to the public. And so it's a bit of a needle to thread for, people who under who are advocating for taxpayers because it costs taxpayers ultimately for them to comply with the records request. But at the same time, it also costs taxpayers when they're filing for those records requests and have to pay for it.
And I reached out to the Washington Coalition for Open Government on this. They do quite a bit of work around public records, and they sent me this study. I believe it was 2023 that this was written, and it was a Washington State journalist that helped do this research. But these two researchers, they talked to about 330 people that were requesting public records and was asking them about these fees, not just for body camera footage, but for documents. And they essentially came to the conclusion that it does pose a barrier. And sometimes when journalists or citizen watchdogs that don't have the backing of a big news corporation or news outlet, they might rethink their records requests when they're hit with these fees or just abandon it altogether. And that's the barrier that is being implemented here. And it's not to say that, uh, it's completely unreasonable that they put these fees on because it does take substantial staff time, and they could be charging for the redaction technology as well, and they're choosing not to do that. But it'd still be naive to say that this isn't posing a barrier, and that's exactly what the Coalition for Open Government and this study said. And another interesting point is that when asked kind of why they were looking at imposing this new fee, the records officer told the Board of County Commissioners that the county has fallen victim to a bunch of national YouTube channels that are requesting body camera footage and then putting the most salacious clips up on their YouTube channels. And they said that they think they're doing this because Spokane County, unlike a lot of other jurisdictions, don't charge a redaction fee. So they're able to get these records and this footage at a relatively low cost. And when asked, when the board asked the records officer whether or not they had done a cost analysis or a revenue analysis to see how much money this would raise, they pretty much flat out said, no, we haven't because we don't think the YouTubers are going to be willing to pay this. And I see their reasoning there, but at the same time, it's not just YouTubers that are requesting this footage. It's us, it's the citizens, as I've said uh, over and over. And I think this proposal might be overlooking that slightly.
Yeah, I wonder if a solution to that would be for if there's a request for body cam footage, they just make it available to the public itself. So that would do a couple things. One, it would give everyone access to the same records, and then also it would allow people to verify because like this, like you said, the salacious part of it, where people can see the full context of the video. So I wonder if that's a potential or if that's even viable.
Yeah, I'm not sure how they're going to approach. I think it seems pretty likely that they'll pass this fee. The county board will, considering that the sheriff's office and the record staff have proposed it. There's going to be a hearing later this month where residents can kind of weigh in. Typically, not a lot of people show up to these for Spokane County, but I think it's just going to be another routine fee that they implement. Again, a lot of other jurisdictions have this, and I have some numbers right in front of me to kind of compare it. I think so. Tacoma charges 49 cents per minute of staff redaction time. Seattle charges 80 cents. Olympia charges 75 cents. And the city of Spokane, which is within Spokane County, they charge 76 cents. So 78 cents is pretty reasonable considering um, that these other jurisdictions around them and across the state have relatively the same fee. But it's not without consequence.
Yeah, I think the issue is going to be also if there's inflation, like there's been in the last couple of years, where the costs start to go up, but also if body cam footage becomes more and more and more part of news reporting, that they're going to have to change the way that they release these records in a way that just it almost it's going to be an interesting discussion because, like I said, what we're seeing is this kind of this meeting or conflict between two issues that concern taxpayers. One is being able to access these records in an affordable way, but also without imposing costs on the governments that they pay that they fund through their tax dollars. So they can end up paying twice in different ways. One when they, are funding the local government's public office, public records office, and then the other one is when they're having to get the records themselves. So, yeah, this is definitely going to be an interesting story to follow along. And we appreciate your coverage, Tim. Listeners can keep up with this story and others at thecentersquare.com. I'm your host, TJ Martinell, and thanks for listening to this episode of Washington in Focus.